In this video, I'm going to break down the process I took my client Eamon through, where we went through a 5-month muscle building phase that ended on the left, where we put on a ton of muscle, and then the 12-week cut that we went through to get him looking like a lean, mean, sexy machine on the right. Let's dive into it. So one of the first things you want to do if you're trying to get an understanding of where your metabolism's at is you want to track and see what is coming in from an energy intake standpoint and how the weight is responding. You want to take weekly averages so that you're getting a better indicator as to how the metabolism is adapting. Off to the far right, you can see his Whoop score. We were tracking his recovery as he was training hard. And then from a macro standpoint, we wanted to set his protein at about his body weight, roughly a little bit higher, but in a building phase, it's not as important since he has adequate calories. His fats are going to be at around 25% of his calories, and then carbs made up the rest. And then the last thing that I'll just call out here is that in a building phase, we want to look at anywhere from 100 to 200 calories of a surplus, and we're looking at 0.5 to 1% of his body weight gained a week. That ultimately ends up only being 2 to 4 pounds per month. So we're not doing anything crazy. We want to make sure that he stayed lean throughout the process as much as possible, at least. So then what you're looking at here is his tracker as he was going through his cut. This is the last month and a half of his cut. You can see he was at 197.8 and then all the way at the bottom, 184.5. He started his cut at 206. You'll see that on the next slide. But what we're doing here as we're going into a cut is we're going to bump protein up slightly. We're going to try and find 1% of his body weight loss per week, give or take. And then his fats are going to stay at around 20 to 30%, kind of depends on what the person can adhere to, and then carbohydrates are going to make up the rest. You can see the steps to the right of his weight. That's something we wanted to keep an eye on as well, just to make sure that we were keeping movement high as he was training hard. He was on about a 5-day split, upper lower total body with a day of conditioning or yoga, kind of whatever he was feeling like. And then I'll go to the next slide and just kind of show you what the overall measurements and weight look like. So what you're looking at here is just his measurements and his weigh-ins at the different times in which we changed our approach in the nutritional periodization. And one thing I want to call out here, if you look at build start to cut start, that's essentially the time in which he was building. And when we're looking at this, we want to see the chest growing, the arms growing, the hips growing, and the thighs growing, while keeping the navel above the navel and below the navel relatively consistent, which is what you see here. So we're minimizing fat gain as much as possible, maximizing muscle building in those areas that he wants. Then when we go into that 12-week cut, everything sheds off and the guy looks like an absolute stud. This guy was definitely one of my favorite clients. He just put his head down, put in the work, and was super fun to work with. If you want to learn more about how I coach my clients, I can do a 15-minute nutrition assessment for you in the bio.